The walls of the detention facility hummed with the sterile monotony of fluorescent light. Luna sat in the quiet corner of her cell, her mind sharper than it had ever been, her body still but her thoughts in constant motion. Months of isolation had stripped her of vanity and comfort, but not of her instincts. What the law had taken from her, freedom, credibility, identity, she was now determined to reclaim, piece by piece, using the only weapon she had left, her understanding of human nature. The justice system had not yet closed its case. Her trial was suspended pending further investigation into new evidence, which meant she was caught in a purgatory between guilt and innocence, watched every hour, dissected like a specimen. But purgatory, she knew, was still a kind of opportunity. It was the thin, silent space where she could bend perception to her will. Her days followed a rhythm she had learned to exploit. Every morning, a guard would deliver her meal, check her cell, and log her behavior. It was a ritual of bureaucracy, and most of the guards treated it as such, until she noticed one who didn't. His name was Holden. Middle-aged, neither cruel nor kind, he carried a heaviness that no training could mask. He avoided eye contact, flinched at raised voices, and carried his authority like an uncomfortable costume. Luna began to study him with the same precision she once used to decode genetic sequences. She noticed the tremor in his hands when he signed reports, the faint nicotine stains on his fingers that betrayed sleepless nights, the way he lingered outside her cell a second too long, as if debating whether to speak. Holden had once believed in the system, she realized. That belief had since curdled into resentment. A man like him was dangerous to his superiors, but useful to someone like her. Over time, Luna began to adjust her demeanor, crafting her performance carefully, not submissive, not defiant, but human. She spoke softly when others screamed, offered calm when the corridors echoed with chaos. When she thanked Holden for bringing her a book one day, he froze, as if the sound of gratitude were foreign to him. "You don't have to pretend," he muttered. Luna smiled faintly. "I'm not pretending. Pretending is what got me here." That line hung between them like an invisible thread. Their conversations deepened in fragments, small exchanges during his rounds, moments that appeared harmless on surveillance, but built something larger in the shadows. Luna never asked for favors, not directly. She shared fragments of herself, stories of her research, her lost career, the betrayal that had turned her from scientist to scapegoat. She spoke of justice not as revenge, but as equilibrium, a balance disrupted by greed. Holden listened, at first with skepticism, then with something resembling belief. She could see it in the way his eyes began to soften when he looked at her, the way he lingered after she finished speaking. He didn't know he was already being pulled into her orbit. What Luna did was not manipulation in her mind, it was adaptation. The world had turned her into prey. Now she would learn to hunt. She began weaving her truth with strategic omissions, painting herself as the victim of a vast conspiracy while never denying her own mistakes. That honesty, or the illusion of it, was her strongest weapon. Holden began to slip her small kindnesses, extra paper, a longer walk in the courtyard, unmonitored minutes during visitation hours. Each concession was justified in his mind as empathy, not corruption. Luna made sure of that. But she was not cruel. She saw in Holden a brokenness she recognized, the exhaustion of someone who had tried to do the right thing for too long in a world that rewarded silence. Their connection grew dangerously personal. She began to ask about his life, his regrets. He spoke of a son estranged after his wife's death, of debts he could never repay, of a moral fatigue that hollowed him out. "I used to think justice was a clean thing," he said one night, leaning against the bars. "Now I just try to get through the day." Luna looked at him with quiet intensity. "Then let me help you remember what it looks like." In that moment, a line was crossed. It wasn't physical, not yet, but it was emotional, psychological, irrevocable. Holden began sneaking her news from the outside world. Articles about her case, whispers about the corporate network still under investigation, and updates on Bill Spencer, the man whose testimony could either save or damn her. Luna's name still circulated in headlines, her trial a magnet for speculation. Bill, too, was under scrutiny for his previous involvement. He had once defended her publicly, claiming she was more victim than villain. That defense had earned him praise from some, condemnation from others. His reputation now hung by a thread, one that Luna's next move could sever completely. Through Holden, Luna gained access to information she should never have known. She learned that new evidence had surfaced, emails that could exonerate her, but implicated powerful figures, including those connected to Bill's business interests. She realized that the legal machinery was stalling intentionally, waiting for her to break or for Bill to withdraw his support. The more she saw, the clearer her path became. If she could turn Holden into her channel, a way to leak controlled truths to the outside, she could shift from being a pawn in her own case to a player. But to do that, she would have to push him further than she wanted to. Luna began to blur the boundary between trust and intimacy. She thanked him more often, let her voice soften when she spoke his name. She told him things no one else knew, or seemed to. She let silence linger between them until it became charged. Holden's guilt deepened, but so did his need to protect her. When she finally asked him for something, just a single document, she said, one that could prove the falsification of her data, he hesitated only briefly. He told himself it was harmless, that justice required risk. Within days, Luna had in her hands what she needed, the missing link connecting the corrupt biotech firm to the officials who had framed her. It was enough to reopen her defense, and to implicate Bill, who had unknowingly signed off on a subsidiary contract years ago. She stared at the document for hours, feeling the tremor of triumph mingled with dread. She had her leverage now, but it came with poison attached. If she used it, Bill would be dragged into a legal firestorm. If she didn't, she might never clear her name. Her heart ached with the weight of it. She remembered his face during their last meeting before her arrest, his eyes filled with helpless conviction, his voice breaking as he swore he'd stand by her no matter what the evidence said. Now, that very loyalty could destroy him. Luna's manipulation of Holden began to unravel as guilt seeped into her. She had never intended to hurt him, but the man's affection had become dangerous. He began speaking of helping her escape, of starting over somewhere new. His desperation frightened her. She realized that she had lit a fire she could no longer control. Worse, the internal investigation had started to close in. Supervisors noticed inconsistencies in Holden's reports, missing timestamps, unauthorized entries. The facility's surveillance logs showed irregularities during his rounds. A quiet inquiry began, one that could expose everything. Luna tried to distance herself, but it was too late. Holden confronted her one night, eyes hollow. "Did you use me?" he asked. The question cut through her like glass. She could have lied. She could have soothed him with another performance. But something inside her snapped. "I needed to survive," she said quietly. "And you are the only one who still believed in something." Tears welled in his eyes, not from betrayal, but from recognition. He saw in her reflection the same compromise that had destroyed him years ago. The next morning, the prison erupted with tension. Holden was gone, suspended pending investigation. His absence created chaos in security rotations, and Luna's cell was searched. The hidden document she had smuggled from him was discovered. Within hours, her lawyer received notice. Her case had been escalated, and new charges might be filed for evidence tampering. The very proof that could have saved her now threatened to damn her further. Outside, Bill was summoned to testify again. The press devoured the story, his former lover accused of manipulating a guard, new evidence linking his company to the conspiracy, questions about whether he had aided her in secret. His empire wobbled under the weight of speculation. For the first time, Bill found himself facing not just legal exposure, but moral reckoning. If he defended Luna again, he could lose everything. If he abandoned her, he would lose the last remnant of his humanity. From her cell, Luna watched the coverage on a flickering television, her stomach twisting. The sight of Bill being cornered by reporters felt like a knife to the gut. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had wanted control, not destruction. She had wanted to expose truth, not entangle the one man who had once believed her capable of redemption. The walls that had once felt like her cage now felt like her punishment. Her lawyer visited her days later, pale and tense. "They're calling your actions psychological coercion," he said. "The guard's testimony could make things worse." Luna's heart sank. "And Bill?" she asked. "He's being investigated for obstruction," came the reply. She closed her eyes. The irony was cruel. Every man who had tried to save her was now paying for her salvation. In the weeks that followed, Luna began to withdraw. The facility staff avoided her. The inmates whispered her name like a curse. She became both myth and warning, a woman too intelligent, too dangerous, too manipulative. But deep within, her defiance flickered on. She began writing again. Long letters she never sent, confessions addressed to no one, apologies wrapped in strategy. She wrote to Holden, to Bill, to herself, trying to chart the point where survival became sin. Her lawyers managed to negotiate one chance for redemption. The document she had obtained illegally was ruled inadmissible, but the information it revealed led investigators to the real source of the fraud. A plea deal was placed on the table, reduced charges in exchange for full cooperation. Yet Luna hesitated. Cooperation meant confirming her manipulation, admitting her guilt in ways that would forever define her as the woman who corrupted the system from within. Refusal meant life behind bars and the ruin of everyone connected to her. When the final hearing arrived, the courtroom was packed. Bill sat among the spectators, weary and defeated. Their eyes met briefly, one last, wordless acknowledgement of the damage they had done to each other in the name of love and justice. Luna rose to speak, her voice calm but trembling. "I didn't set out to break the law," she said. "But the law had already broken me. If survival is a crime, then so is silence. And I chose to live." The court sentenced her to extended confinement, but the deal spared Bill from prosecution. The media painted her as both villain and victim, a woman who had used her mind as a weapon and paid the price. In the months that followed, she faded from public memory, her name reduced to a case study in ethics seminars and legal forums. But somewhere deep inside, Luna knew she had accomplished something irreversible. She had exposed not just the corruption of those who framed her, but the hypocrisy of the system that punished her for fighting back. And though her choices had dragged Bill through fire, they had also forced him to confront his own complacency. Years later, when he visited her one last time, the glass between them felt both fragile and eternal. He looked at her not with blame, but with a quiet sorrow that bordered on admiration. "You changed everything," he said softly. Luna's smile was faint, tired, and true. "No," she replied. "I just stopped pretending that goodness alone could survive the world we live in." And when the guards led her away, the air between them carried not the weight of guilt, but the echo of two people who had finally seen each other for what they truly were, survivors in a world that punished the intelligent for refusing to die quietly. Bill stayed in the visiting room long after Luna was led away, staring at the faint imprint of her hand on the glass partition. Outside, the afternoon light bled into the dull gray of early evening, the kind of light that made everything look unfinished. His world had already collapsed once before because of her. Now, it was as though he was standing on its ashes, unsure whether to rebuild or simply let the wind carry what was left. He could hear her voice still, low and steady, when she had said those words, "I just stopped pretending that goodness alone could survive the world we live in."
He knew she was right.
And that was what terrified him most. In the weeks that followed, Bill's name became synonymous with moral ambiguity. He had escaped legal punishment, but his reputation never recovered. Investors withdrew, partners hesitated, and his board demanded explanations he could not provide without betraying her. He had been both the protector and the scapegoat, a man torn between the woman who had manipulated him and the justice she had forced him to confront. The truth was cruelly balanced. Luna had not ruined him. She had revealed him. Everything he had built was rooted in compromise. She had only stripped away the illusion that he was any different from the corrupt system he once condemned. Still, he couldn't let her go. Every night, when the house grew silent, he would find himself scrolling through old news articles, tracing the timeline of her case, as if somewhere in the fine print lay an alternate ending. He spoke to no one about her, not even his closest allies. To the world, she was a stain he needed to forget. To him, she was the only person who had ever forced him to see who he truly was. And so, when a reporter reached out with a lead suggesting that Luna's legal team was appealing her sentence on grounds of misconduct, he didn't hesitate. He called her lawyer, demanded a meeting, and offered to fund the new defense anonymously. At first, her lawyer refused. "You've done enough," he said sharply. "If the court finds out you're involved, they'll use it against her again. You're radioactive." But Bill persisted, offering not just money but influence, quiet negotiations, connections with sympathetic judges, even evidence he had once suppressed. "She deserves more than silence," he said. "So do I." Reluctantly, the lawyer agreed to let him help under one condition: he would remain invisible. No press, no testimony, no contact with Luna. Bill agreed, though the last part cut him deepest. Meanwhile, inside the prison, Luna had changed. Her manipulation of Holden and her tactical brilliance had earned her notoriety among inmates and guards alike. She was both feared and respected, known as the woman who could turn any situation to her advantage. Yet the power she wielded no longer comforted her. It felt hollow, like an echo of a version of herself she no longer wanted to be. Late at night, she would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every decision that had brought her here. She had survived by turning people into instruments, and in doing so, she had become something she once despised, a product of control. The prison psychologist, a young woman named Naomi, became the first person in months to see through her defenses. "You're not dangerous because you lie," Naomi said during one of their sessions. "You're dangerous because you tell the truth when it suits you." Luna almost laughed at that. "Isn't that what survival is?" she asked. "Choosing when the truth can save you, and when it will kill you?" But Naomi didn't flinch. "It's also what destroys you." It was Naomi who told her about the appeal. The case had gained quiet traction due to inconsistencies in her prior conviction, mishandled evidence, missing surveillance footage, and a potential conflict of interest among investigators. Luna suspected Bill's hand in it, but said nothing. Hope was a fragile thing in her world, too easily weaponized. Still, the thought of him out there, risking what little he had left, filled her with a dangerous mix of longing and anger. He was the only man she had ever loved, but also the one she had endangered beyond forgiveness. The new investigation unearthed details that threatened to rewrite everything once again. Holden, the guard she had manipulated, resurfaced in a federal witness protection program. His testimony, though emotionally fractured, painted a more complex picture of Luna's actions. He admitted that she had never explicitly coerced him, that his choices had been his own. He described her not as a predator, but as someone who saw what I wanted to believe in and gave it back to me. The prosecution's narrative of manipulation began to crumble. But the legal system is slow to absolve women like Luna. Even as new evidence emerged, the court hesitated to reopen the case fully. Too many reputations, too many institutions were at stake. Bill realized that if he wanted to free her, he would have to take a public risk, a move that could destroy the remnants of his career, but might finally set her free. Against his lawyer's advice, he scheduled a press conference. The day of the conference, Luna was in her cell, unaware of what was unfolding. The television in the common area flickered to life, and there he was, Bill Spencer, calm, deliberate, and unflinching. He admitted to everything: his role in the contracts that had indirectly funded the biotech corruption, his initial cover-ups to protect his company, his silence when he should have spoken. "I enabled a system that punished truth-tellers and rewarded manipulation," he said. Luna Forrester was one of the few who tried to fight it, and I helped destroy her. The reaction was explosive. Within hours, social media erupted with divided fury. Some hailed Bill as a man finally doing the right thing. Others called it a calculated act of guilt. The government, unable to ignore the storm, reopened the investigation. Within weeks, Luna was transferred to a federal holding facility pending a retrial. When Bill visited her this time, there was no glass between them. She looked thinner, paler, but her eyes were steady. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. "Now they'll destroy you too." He smiled faintly. "Maybe. But I had to prove that one of us could still tell the truth without turning it into a weapon." She stared at him, 1,000 unspoken emotions flickering across her face. "And if the truth doesn't save me?" she asked quietly. "Then at least it won't bury you," he replied. The retrial became one of the most publicized legal events in recent memory. Lawyers, journalists, and scholars debated every facet of it: ethics, power, gender, morality. Luna testified with unflinching honesty. She admitted her manipulation, her desperation, her strategic use of empathy as a tool. But she also laid bare the system that had created her, a machine designed to crush those who refused to comply. "I used their rules against them," she said on the stand. "And for that, they called me dangerous." Her words electrified the courtroom. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When the verdict came, the silence was unbearable. Luna Forrester was found guilty of ethical misconduct, but acquitted of criminal conspiracy. She would not walk free immediately, but her record would be revised, her sentence commuted. She had not been vindicated, but she had been humanized, and that was a victory in itself. When she finally stepped outside the prison gates months later, the air felt unreal, too light, too fragile. Bill was there, waiting. They didn't embrace. They simply stood, two survivors bound by the weight of everything they had destroyed and everything they had saved. "What now?" he asked. Luna looked out at the horizon, where the city shimmered like a promise and a threat. "Now we stop pretending we can fix what's broken," she said softly. "We just learn to live inside the cracks." They didn't rebuild what they once had, they couldn't. Too much truth lay between them. But they stayed in each other's orbit. Two people who had seen the worst of power and the best of defiance, who understood that survival was not about